Hey everybody, what's going on? It's James here. I wanted to shoot a quick Bitcoin / cryptocurrency update for you for Friday, July the 17th. Before I jump into the content for this video, please do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you check the description for a link where you can join the Patron for even more frequent updates, as well as to support the channel, right? More people that are supporting the channel, more videos I can do, the more coverage I can do. So let's jump into a couple of charts, and I'm going to try to make this video fairly quick, probably 10 to 15 minutes. I just want to take a quick view of Bitcoin, talk about what's going on in the markets a little bit, and then we'll wait for next week, right? We'll wait for the weekly close and all that. So first things first, what I want to do is take a look at this weekly chart. And a couple of things about this weekly chart. Obviously, this week is not closed, right? It's just Friday, so there's about 2.5 days, a little less than 2.5 days left in the week. But when I look at this, it's kind of the same story, right? Very, very low volume. Volume is just drying up. And typically what we see is we see volume starting to die off before a big move in the market. Now, it doesn't always tell us which way that move is going to be. It doesn't necessarily say, hey, it's going to spike up or spike down. But it does kind of give us a warning that, probably in for a big move one way or the other. All right. I tend to believe that move is going to be down. I've removed most of the lines from the RSI now from this weekly chart, but I'm still paying attention to this red line, which I feel like is resistance. Right. It had its starting point back here in July of 2019. Had a very nice, double top looking formation right through here. And then it didn't quite get there right here. Now it did get there in the wick, but it closed underneath it. What I'm really watching though, not just that downward sloping resistance, this looks a whole lot like a descending triangle. I'm going to draw this in yellow so it's a little bit easier to see, and I'll make it a little bit thicker so that it really stands out. If you look here, this is a very flat bottom line of support, and then we have this downward curving line on top. See this? And that looks like a descending triangle to me on the RSI after a big up move, right? This helps to kind of support my theory, in my opinion, that this is just distribution. And after distribution, what typically comes next is some type of markdown phase. And I think it remains to be seen whether or not this markdown phase is going to be a correction, right, as part of a new uptrend. Maybe we correct back down to the 200-week moving average, for example, down around $6,200, or if this is going to be something more drastic that takes out this previous low. Right now, I think it really depends on the stock market and how this COVID-19 stuff really turns out. Is it going to be another super serious thing where economy starts shutting down, or is this going to be handled with a little bit less ferocity, where maybe we try to keep life as normal as possible and do things like wear masks and allow businesses to continue to operate, which I think that's the right decision, right? I'm hoping that they allow businesses to stay open and do what they do, and maybe people just wear a mask. I think shutting businesses down the way they did was, overkill. And even as somebody who was, I was one of the people that was like, hey, we need to take this seriously. We don't have enough data. We don't really know what the numbers are. We don't want to be spreading this thing. I was one of the more cautious people, if you want to call it that. But I never agreed with shutting the businesses down, which I think took it too far. So hopefully they don't do that again. But if they do, they're obviously going to probably crash the market, and I think Bitcoin goes with it. If the stock market can survive, which, if I'm being totally transparent, I don't think it will. I think it's only a matter of time until the house of cards collapses. But if the stock market survives, I do think this will just be a correction, and that we'll see the beginning of a new bull market. Okay, so just being patient, very, very patient. I know that's hard sometimes, especially when you're stuck in a market that's just ranging and ranging. But we can see now that this 200 moving average is now curled right into the golden pocket. Now it's not going to stay there, right? Depending on price, probably going to move up above it. And this is the same thing that we saw last year, right? I talked about this for months and months about going back down to fill in this gap, how the 200 moving average was getting further and further up, how I thought it would go down, hit that 200 moving average, throw a tail down to fill in the gap, and then move up from there. And that's exactly what it did back in March. It threw that tail down. I think we're probably going to see something like that again, where we throw some kind of tail down maybe to get down to this golden pocket. And if we're going to move up, I think we'll move up from there. If we continue moving down and we end up closing below the 200-week moving average, then I think we have to start looking at that as a possibility that it's going to turn into resistance. Okay. But yeah, overall weekly picture, we're still above the 19-week moving average. That's the first support that I'd be watching. The next support is going to be down there around that 200-week moving average. And again, I'm watching these lines in RSI to see whether or not we break south out of this descending triangle. Okay. Real quickly, I want to show you guys a chart that I haven't talked about in many, many months. If you've been watching the channel for a long time, you'll probably remember this. This was a line chart that I drew up last year, right? And a lot of people didn't like this line chart. A lot of people thought this line chart was nonsense and that my targets were unrealistic. I'm talking about this 4-year trend line, for example. But let me turn off the lines and put it on a candlestick chart, and I want to show you something. Do you see exactly where that hit? Hit right on that 4-year trend line and the bottom of that downward sloping channel. So a lot of people, got completely smashed because they refused to be patient and wait for it to happen, especially the people who got caught back here in February. When this thing broke north and started going up, a lot of people just assumed that the new bull market was here and that the bottom was in. In fact, many people gave me a lot of grief because all the way through this pump, I was still saying that I didn't believe 6,400 was the bottom. And there were even people that were saying, basically unfollow anybody on Twitter who's saying 6,400 wasn't the bottom. But it wasn't the bottom, right? All through that time, I was still waiting to see if we were going to get down to that $4,000 or $4,200 level. And that's exactly what we did. It just took a massive amount of patience. And I think it's the same thing right now. I think it's just taking a lot of patience. It's really hard sometimes to just wait. But that's what I'm doing. I'm not telling you that you should do that. Obviously, you have to do what's right for you. But when I start looking at this, I get, a lot of, flashbacks to this area back here, right? See this? Now, there are some huge differences. This descending triangle came at the end of a move. This descending triangle is obviously after this big pump. So there's some very key differences. But I still believe that we're probably going to see another waterfall type of event where this thing crashes down and starts filling in some of these old gaps. And if you're wondering, well, what gaps am I talking about? I'm talking about those gaps on the daily. For example, this one down here around 7,800 and this one down here around 5,500, right? And then if we get down to those levels, I'll start looking at it and trying to play it level by level. But right now we've just slowly creeped back down to this red line here, this support. And this is basically the trend that has started back in February 2019. And it had held up pretty well. You can see all through here in late 2019, even in January 2020, right? Held up here in March before finally collapsing. And then right here it acted as support again. So this is a line that I think is important. It needs to hold for bulls. And if it breaks, I think it's going to be an important sign for the bears. All right. So that's kind of what I'm looking at on the daily. Of course, the 200-day moving average has been slowly curling up over these last several weeks. So it's all the way up to 85.20. So we know that the 200-day moving average is an important moving average. And again, if we go down to it, we have to watch. Is it going to act as support, and are we going to get a nice bull bounce off of it? Or is it going to cave and turn into a line of resistance? Okay, so definitely worth keeping an eye on that. On the 3-day chart, I'm still watching this very slow developing what I would call a falling wedge, which is actually a bullish pattern, right? We've got this nice downward sloping line on top, this nice downward sloping support on bottom, and I'm really just waiting to see which way this breaks. Is it going to break north and be a bullish sign, or is it going to break south and be a bearish sign? And I'm still watching the same basic range, somewhere between 8850-ish all the way up to around 9800, seeing which side of this range gives first. But if I zoom in on this price, you can kind of see here that we've tested the top, the bottom, the top, the bottom, and this pump only made it up to the midway point here before kind of falling back down. And if I draw some fib levels, I haven't done this, so I don't know for sure, but almost looks like a 61.8 move there. Yeah, right in that golden pocket. See that? Let me zoom in a little bit more, make it a little bit more clear, turn the volume off. And if you look, here's the 61.8 of that little local move. Golden pocket looks like that. So just threw a wick right up there and then moved off of it. So, but the range is super tight. It's only a couple $100. These last, probably 10 days or so. So it's been really, really, I guess, lean meat, if you will. Hasn't really been a whole lot of feasting going on, right? Unless you're getting really, really good entries, it makes it fairly tough to trade that range. I'm not a range trader. Okay, now some people, they excel at that stuff. I'm not that guy, right? I'm much more of a trend trader or a reversal type of trader where I'm going for, I'm looking for reversals, or I'm looking to ride a trend that's already proven itself. But ranging markets, I tend to kind of stay away from. They're pretty tough to trade for my style of trading. So, but that's what I'm watching that falling wedge, right? And watching price action to see which one of these gives first. So that's kind of a look at the weekly, that's a look at the 3-day, that's a look at the daily, that's a look at that macro picture from back in the day, this line chart that played out so perfectly. And it's funny because, when I drew this up, like I said, people just thought it was nuts, but, eventually it got there. It just took a lot longer than what I would have liked to have seen, for sure, right? One thing I will say, guys, is when I look at this and this super low volume that we're looking at, and this is really apparent on the weekly chart, like if we just take everything off and look at volume, I think, and this is just a theory, but I do think that there's a lot less retail involved with cryptocurrency than what there used to be, right? I think this industry was really heavily retail driven up until 2017. Then the CME got involved, and then of course you had Backed, launched their futures as well. I think there's a lot more big money involved now, and I think that's the reason that it started to slow down. Its movements aren't quite as easy to call. It's moving a lot slower than what crypto used to move, and volume is drying up. And if you really know anything about the stock market, a lot of people will say, when it comes to stocks, sell in May and walk away. And that really has to do with the fact that a lot of people, are taking vacations during the summer. They're away from their, offices and so on and so forth. And I'm just wondering a little bit if maybe that's not, kind of bleeding over to crypto, because it is, maybe more institutionally driven now than what it used to be. And there's a lot less retail involved, right? Most retail traders only last in a market a couple of years before they burn out, before they lose their money, before they decide that they're not cut out to be a trader, so on and so forth. So what you get is you get people who completely abandon the market, or you get people that just decide it's better just to hold what they have and not try to trade. And if they're not trading, then of course, they're not adding to the volume. And of course, if they've disappeared from the market, they're also not adding to the volume. So we have really low volume. Volume right here for, this last week. Let's not talk about this week because it's not over yet. But last week, volume was around 50,000 Bitcoin, right? This is on Coinbase. Obviously, there's multiple exchanges. There's more volume than just that. But comparably, 50,000 Bitcoin in July. You look at July of last year, 191,000, 189,000, 196,000. Even this end of July, 105,000, 82,000, 118,000. So to see these candles where it's 79, 62, 71, 51, it's very, very low. Way less volume this year than there was last year at this same time. So again, that makes me lean toward the fact that a big move is incoming. See how volume was basically just drying up, and then you have this huge move down. That's kind of what I'm expecting here as well. All right, but we'll see. The move could obviously go up, and I want you to be aware of that. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't have a crystal ball, right? I'm just going by what I can see in the charts, and you have to do what's right for you. All right, but I wanted to do this video. I want to give you guys a quick update. That's what I'm saying. I hope it helps in some way, shape, or form. And obviously, please remember that I am just some guy sitting in a spare bedroom. So nothing in the video is financial advice. Nothing in the video is trade advice. You should always do your own due diligence and seek out professional investment advice from a licensed financial advisor before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, and of course, like I said, check that description for a link where you can join the Patron that helps support the channel and gives you access to more frequent updates. This is James with Crypto Common Sense reminding you to please trade safe.